Title 13, The Don Who Ruled from Prison. Part 3, Finale. The storm began quietly. No gunfire echoed across cities, only a heavy silence that came before empires collapsed. Across Italy, authorities prepared a secret operation, believing the moment to destroy Salvatore Ricci had finally arrived. The investigation was called Operation Iron Crown, the largest anti-mafia operation in European history. Using Alberto Serra as their inside informant, prosecutors prepared their final strike against Ricci's global empire. Satellite surveillance began tracking cargo ships moving through hidden Mediterranean routes. Financial analysts monitored offshore accounts shifting millions across invisible digital channels. Undercover agents infiltrated smuggling networks operating across Spain, Turkey, and Morocco. Every investigation pointed toward one final illegal arms shipment that could permanently connect Ricci to global weapons trafficking. If authorities captured proof, Ricci would vanish into permanent isolation and his empire would collapse. Inside the prison, Alberto Serra walked the corridors feeling guilt tightening around his chest with every step. The recording device hidden beneath his uniform burned against his skin like a mark of betrayal. He told himself he was doing this for his daughter's surgery and her future survival. But guilt whispered louder each day, reminding him that Ricci had never forced him into loyalty. Salvatore had simply offered help when the world had abandoned him. Inside Cell Block D, Salvatore calmly read a history book about the fall of the Roman Empire. When Alberto approached the bars, Ricci closed the book slowly and studied his face with quiet precision. Within seconds, Salvatore already understood everything without hearing a single word. Years of ruling through deception had sharpened his instincts beyond ordinary perception. He noticed Alberto's trembling fingers gripping the prison keys too tightly. He heard the faint mechanical clicking hidden beneath the guard's uniform. Salvatore spoke gently, his voice calm and almost curious. "Tell me, does betrayal feel heavier than loyalty?" Alberto froze as the question pierced deeper than any threat could have. Silence filled the cell before Alberto collapsed emotionally and confessed everything. He revealed Operation Iron Crown, the surveillance recordings, and the government protection deal. He expected Ricci to explode in anger or demand revenge. Instead, Salvatore simply nodded with quiet understanding. "You chose your daughter over me," Ricci said calmly. "That means you are still human." He leaned closer to the bars, his expression strangely respectful. "I respect human men far more than loyal animals." Then Salvatore revealed a terrifying truth he had hidden for months. He explained that he had already prepared for betrayal long before Alberto ever considered cooperating. Ricci had secretly activated a final system within his empire called the Silent Crown. The system functioned through encrypted digital commands that operated independently from his direct leadership. Financial vaults were controlled by biometric deadman switches linked to his survival. Commanders received instructions through anonymous blockchain identities, making leadership impossible to trace. No arrest, not even Ricci's death, could stop the organization from functioning. While authorities prepared their arrests, Luca Ricci made a fatal decision outside prison walls. He secretly contacted rival Balkan syndicates, planning to overthrow his father and seize control of the empire. Luca believed Ricci's cautious leadership made the organization weak and outdated. He wanted dominance built through fear, public violence, and ruthless expansion. But Luca underestimated the loyalty of men who remembered Ricci's rise from poverty and discipline. Before Luca finalized his betrayal, senior captains intercepted him inside a private Sicilian villa. The oldest captain, Matteo Caruso, faced him with quiet disappointment. "Your father built a kingdom with discipline," he said calmly. "You would burn it with ego." Gunshots echoed through marble hallways, ending Luca Ricci's rebellion before it could begin. By morning, Luca was dead, and the captains buried the truth to protect Salvatore from the pain of knowing his son betrayed him. Across Europe, Operation Iron Crown launched simultaneous raids expecting Ricci's empire to collapse instantly. Instead, something terrifying happened. Nothing stopped. Money continued flowing through international financial systems without interruption. Drug shipments and smuggling operations followed invisible instructions no authority could trace. Prosecutors slowly realized they were no longer fighting a mafia boss. They were fighting an idea, a system, a ghost empire. Days later, Alberto returned to Ricci's cell for what he believed would be their final conversation. He expected hatred or punishment but found Salvatore holding a folded hospital document. Inside was full confirmation that Alberto's daughter's surgery had been completely paid. Tears filled the guard's eyes as he whispered one trembling question. Why would you still help me? Salvatore looked toward the faint sunlight reaching through the prison window. Because loyalty should not depend on survival, he replied softly. It should depend on memory. Months passed as Salvatore's health began deteriorating silently inside the prison. Doctors eventually diagnosed him with aggressive pancreatic cancer, leaving him less than 6 months to live. Authorities offered him reduced prison conditions and medical transfer if he testified against his organization. Ricky refused without hesitation, understanding that his silence was the final pillar holding his empire together. He chose death over betrayal, protecting the system he spent his life building. On his final evening, Salvatore sat in the prison yard feeding pigeons as the sun disappeared behind steel fences. Watching the birds gather around him, he whispered quietly into the fading light. A king is not remembered for how long he ruled, but for what survives after he falls. That night, Salvatore Ricci died peacefully inside his cell, surrounded only by silence. Years later, investigators continued tracking financial operations connected to his empire across continents. Some believed the organization dissolved over time, while others believed it evolved into something even more invisible. Inside mafia circles, one truth remained unquestioned. Salvatore Ricci never lost control, not when he was arrested, not when he was betrayed, and not even when he died. Because true kings do not rule territories. They rule systems that outlive them. And somewhere inside the criminal underworld, his invisible empire continued breathing in silence. If legends could speak, they would say one final truth remained. The most dangerous rulers are not the ones who live forever, but the ones whose power survives death. And that was the story of the Don who ruled from prison, a man who lost his freedom but never lost his empire. If you enjoyed dark mafia legends, emotional crime sagas, and cinematic storytelling, follow the channel so you never miss the next story. Because the next legend may be even darker.